What happens when America's most polished journalist collides with the royal family's most controversial export? At first, it looks like just another primetime sit-down. A comfortable studio, polite greetings, and the illusion of civility. But beneath the warm lights of CNN, Anderson Cooper didn't come to play along. And Meghan Markle didn't come to be humbled. She came armed with defiance, dismissive smiles, and that sharp edge of entitlement that has polarized audiences worldwide. What began as a conversation quickly turned into combat, verbal fencing, where one side wielded facts and the other wielded attitude. By the time the mask slipped, the world had witnessed something far more than an interview. They had witnessed a reckoning. The CNN studio gleamed under the carefully calibrated lights. Everything about the set was pristine. Anderson Cooper, the immaculate alignment of his cue cards, the deliberate stillness of the cameras waiting to capture every angle. Across from him sat Meghan Markle, perfectly poised, legs crossed, her glossy hair catching the light like a halo. She offered that practiced smile that had graced countless magazine covers, the smile that seemed designed to disarm and charm. "Meghan," Anderson began smoothly. "Thank you for joining us tonight." "Of course," she said, her tone sweet, but laced with something faintly performative. "It's always enlightening to sit down with real journalists." Anderson caught the subtle sting in her words, but didn't bite. He only inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Let's begin with something simple. How are you and Harry doing?" For a fleeting second, Meghan's smile froze, an almost imperceptible shift. Then she leaned back slightly, exuding a casual air. "We're fine. We're thriving. Stronger than ever, actually, in spite of what the tabloids would love for people to believe." Her voice carried a sharp edge now, each syllable polished to sound definitive, even defensive. Anderson nodded, maintaining a steady gaze. "There have been rumors, some suggesting that there's tension in the marriage, that Harry struggles with being so far removed from his family, and that rumors," Meghan cut in with a light laugh, though the laughter was brittle. "Do you really want to waste your time giving oxygen to gossip?" "Honestly, Anderson, I'd expect better of you." The studio audience, invited guests seated behind the cameras, shifted uncomfortably. The dismissal was pointed, almost disrespectful. Anderson, however, remained the picture of composure. "I understand your frustration with rumors," he said evenly. "But part of the public's interest lies in how you both are adjusting, given the very public step you took away from royal life. Isn't it fair to ask how you're navigating those changes?" Meghan's smile tightened. "Navigating," she repeated as though tasting the word. "We don't navigate. We lead. We've made choices that serve our happiness, our truth. If people can't handle that, perhaps they should stop projecting their unhappiness onto us." The words rang with condescension. What was meant to be an answer sounded more like a rebuke. Anderson's expression didn't flicker. He shuffled his cards slightly. A movement so subtle it was almost a silent challenge. "So, let's talk about choices, then," he continued. "You've been vocal about your difficulties with the royal family. You've described feeling unsupported, even silenced, but you've also built a very successful platform since stepping away. Podcasts, streaming deals, book contracts. Critics argue that you've leveraged the very institution you condemn. What would you say to them?" Meghan tilted her head, the smile returning, colder this time. "I'd say those critics should try walking a mile in my shoes before they make uninformed judgments. I don't apologize for surviving, Anderson. I don't apologize for making a living after being cut off." Her tone had grown sharper, louder. What had begun as a conversation was already teetering into confrontation. Anderson leaned forward, voice calm and measured. "But Meghan, it wasn't as if you were left destitute. You had a successful acting career before Harry. He has inherited wealth. The perception, fair or not, is that the narrative of financial struggle doesn't align with reality. How do you reconcile that?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Perception," she said, practically spitting the word. "That's the problem, isn't it? Everyone thinks they're entitled to analyze our lives like characters in a play. They don't know the truth. They don't know what we sacrificed. Anderson let the silence breathe for a moment, letting the audience feel the weight of her indignation, then softly, "What exactly did you sacrifice, Meghan?" The question landed like a stone dropped in still water. For the first time, Meghan hesitated. Her lips parted, but the words came slower now, less rehearsed. "Privacy," she said finally. "Peace, the right to live without being torn apart daily by people who have never even met us." Anderson nodded thoughtfully, but there was a flicker of steel in his blue eyes. "Yet here you are sitting in front of millions telling your story on your terms. Does that not contradict the desire for privacy?" Meghan bristled. "It's not contradiction. It's control. We choose what to share. That's our right." "Of course," Anderson agreed smoothly. "But that also makes you public figures who can be questioned on the choices you make. You can't ask for privacy and also command a global spotlight without scrutiny. That's the balance journalism demands." The audience hummed with tension. Meghan crossed her legs more tightly, her hands clasping together in her lap. The mask of charm was thinning and something colder was seeping through. "Balance?" she echoed, her voice dripping disdain. "Funny, Anderson. You talk about balance, yet you sit there with the same smug authority as every other man who's ever tried to diminish me." The words hit like a slap in the quiet studio. Anderson blinked once slowly, but his voice remained calm, even gentle. "I'm not diminishing you, Meghan. I'm holding you accountable. There's a difference." Her laugh was sharp, humorless. "Accountable to whom? To you? To the press that twists every word I say? To a public that's already made up its mind about me?" Anderson didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Accountable to the truth," he said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. The opening act of what was supposed to be a measured discussion had already ignited into a sparring match. And for the first time, Meghan's polished composure looked fragile. The cameras rolled smoothly, but the atmosphere inside the CNN studio had shifted. The polished civility of the opening had evaporated, leaving something raw, something more volatile. Anderson Cooper sat composed, pen poised between his fingers, while Meghan Markle's posture grew taut, her charm slipping into irritation. Anderson's next card was deliberate. He didn't glance at it. He already knew the question. "Meghan, let's talk about Harry. He's spoken often about the toll this has taken on him, the distance from his family, the loss of the military roles he once valued so deeply. How was he adjusting?" Meghan's expression froze for a fraction of a second. Then came the practiced smile, though sharper now, like glass under light. "Harry is thriving. He's never been happier. Actually, we've built a life that finally reflects our values. So, no, Anderson. He's not pining for the past. If that's what you're insinuating." Anderson nodded calmly. "I'm not insinuating, Meghan. I'm asking. There are reports." "Reports?" Meghan cut in, her tone clipped. "From which tabloids?" "The same ones that have stalked us, lied about us, and profited from our suffering." "Please, we don't dignify rumors." The audience shifted again, sensing the bite in her words. Anderson, unshaken, continued in that steady, surgical voice. "Not just tabloids. There have been whispers from those close to the family suggesting Harry feels isolated, caught between two worlds. Do you acknowledge that's a possibility?" Meghan's eyes narrowed. "Do you acknowledge that maybe Harry makes his own choices? That maybe, just maybe, a grown man can decide for himself where he's happiest, or do you prefer the narrative that I somehow control him?" Anderson leaned forward slightly, his voice low, calm, but edged with unmistakable firmness. "It's not about control, Meghan. It's about the fact that before you, Harry was one of the most beloved members of the royal family. He had a role, a purpose, a deep connection with the British public. Since stepping away, much of that has eroded. So, it's a fair question. Has your marriage cost him more than it's given him? The question hung in the air like a live wire. Meghan's jaw tightened and for the first time her voice cracked with heat. That is insulting. We are partners, equals. Harry didn't lose anything. He gained freedom. He gained love. He gained me. Anderson's gaze didn't waver. And in exchange, he lost his family, his titles, his country's affection. Was that a trade worth making? Meghan's laugh was sharp and humorless. You sound like one of those bitter royalists who thinks the crown is sacred. Let me remind you, Anderson, we're not living in the 18th century. Harry doesn't need to bow and scrape for anyone's approval. There was an audible murmur from the studio audience. Her words, dripping with disdain, landed like a hammer blow. Anderson inhaled slowly, maintaining his poise. Let's pivot then. Before Harry, you had a successful acting career. Many people knew you from Suits. Do you ever regret leaving that behind? Walking away from a professional identity of your own? Meghan tilted her head, smirking faintly. Regret? Hardly. I outgrew it. Playing dress-up on a TV set is nothing compared to the impact I've made on a global stage. I didn't trade down Anderson, I traded up. The arrogance in her tone was unmistakable. Anderson's brows rose slightly, but his voice.